Okay, so your repetition sheet, which you have here, prologue? We're going to take a look at that one today, and it'll lead into your synthesis, UTWA, sources, prompts, and all that kind of stuff that we'll also go over probably tomorrow. Definitely tomorrow. Probably starting tomorrow as opposed to today. And then of course you got your essay on Friday. Poetry quiz you folks took yesterday. I'll pass it back tomorrow. I think the Scantrons, but everyone in here took it, so your scores are online. No more poetry quizzes. Hallelujah, fist pump, whatever else you feel like doing. Yeah, last one was good. Probably, I think it was the strongest one overall.
I think it was the not having the clocks for some reason. So the guy said he had focus and said something.
He goes, you guys have 5 minutes left. Oh my bad.
He
I
gave
was
us
feeling it was a lot.
15 minutes.
Yeah, I figured. I was going to say 14 minutes, but I was like, this isn't going to work. I'm just going to put 15 minutes. I did time, because I came back at the end of your period. I timed 5th period and 7th period, and everyone was basically getting done at like 11 minutes or so. So I don't think the clock was really going to play an issue, whether it was 15 minutes, 14 minutes, or you would stay around and watch or not stay just right like this. Take a look at it. Next week, I stuff like Monday. We'll introduce the next book, which you're gonna get Slaughterhouse 5. It's like nothing you've ever read.
That's why.
I'm just gonna leave it at that.
The name is a big misleading.
But that'll be a whole nother thing. But after we go over that intro next week, we'll kind of shift back towards AP exam multiple choice questions that like you're going to encounter. So really, probably not going to be poems. But I'm hoping after having all the experience with the poetry quizzes, after having your experience with making your own AP exams, and I'll get back to that here in a moment, that when we do shift back towards the traditional prose passages and things like that, that you're most likely to encounter in a couple months, that it's not going to seem all that bad at all. So you don't have a quiz next week. Like whatever day you do come in, I don't know, it's going to be Tuesday or Wednesday maybe, that you do see a stack of multiple choice questions. You don't have to get the panic about the clock's going on, and white knuckling your pencil and all that kind of stuff. But it'll be just us kind of transitioning back into it. I'll let you know the next time we do a scored multiple choice. One thing that we will also kind of do is still continue with that time thing though, because the last multiple choice that we do for the year, it'll be about 39 questions in 40 minutes, which just regardless of the face that Jack makes, he has to do because you're going to be doing 60 questions in 60 minutes. But again, it's not poetry. I think you'll be okay with it. So we'll do some stuff to lead into that. That's not happening next week or anything like that. Your multiple choice projects that you turned in, I'm hoping to get those back to you tomorrow. The latest would be Friday, so they'll come back this week. But so far, they're looking good. I like obviously the passages that you were using, stuff that we've done, the questions and all that kind of stuff that folks have done have been good. And really, you making an AP multiple choice, it's also like doing a rhetorical analysis essay. You're not writing it, but you're looking at the syntax, the structure, the purpose, all those things. So all those skills kind of come together within that one assignment. So we'll get those back to you this week. For your synthesis TWA on Friday, remember that you can bring in your copy of the prompt, still right above Shelby said, all of your sources as well as your book. The repetition sheet that you got yesterday, synthesis essay is in mind with that. Because I think a concern that people have with that prompt is how am I going to get all my sources into this essay? Number one, you can kind of outline what you want to do, brainstorm. So when you do come in on Friday, you can start writing immediately. You don't have to think about what you want to write like you did last Friday. But you need 3 quotes coming from the book, and you need to have 4 other sources that you incorporate. The hope is that some of the examples that you use, you can parlay into other examples and sources. So for example, say you're doing something with the graduation speech, and we'll get into the repetition aspect here in a moment. What source would most people probably use with the graduation speech that he gives in chapter 1? The cast down your bucket Atlantic Compromise speech, I would think a lot of people would reference with that part. Or if you're taking a look at chapter 2 in the college and you mentioned the statue, the other Booker T. Washington, source the statue, the visual one. Roz mentioned that there's a lot of parallels with Marcus Garvey. So if you can kind of go into it thinking, use this example, I can take something from the book as well as a source, or if I take this example from the book, that can lead into this example from the book, which could lead into another example from the book with all the repetition that we have. I think the amount of sources that you have to use, it might not feel quite as overwhelming as it may initially. So us going over these, it's a good overview of the book, but also it's some things that you might be able to use when it comes to that synthesis. Also keep in mind, you got your study guides back, that we did a couple weeks ago. You got a boatload of page numbers on them. So if you're looking for specific examples, specific quotes, that certainly could be a good place to start, at least with that first half of the book, which probably not as fresh in your mind as some things from the latter half of the book would be. So that's where we're going to go. The hope is that we can try to get through all of that stuff. Before jump into the repetition page, one thing I do want to look at. Well, that doesn't look good. It's not what my screen shows. Do you call it the spinny ball of death or the beach ball of death? Spinny beach ball of death. We could combine them all together. There we go. On the Google Classroom page, still have all the synthesis stuff, and we'll take a look at the sources in a little bit more detail tomorrow. But the Ruby Bridges painting, Norman Rockwell, it is a color painting. So there are some things, maybe some details that looking at it in color, you might notice or pick up more that you don't see when it's in black and white. So when you are writing your essay, should you decide to use the source, by all means, you can go with like the color image of it. So tomorrow I'll have it up again, but on the Google Classroom I have all the sources together. So the main things that I think people notice would be you see the remnants of the tomato and where it hit the wall and the splatter coming down. The graffiti you can probably pick up a little bit better with it being in color. I think it stands out a little bit more. You have the N-word going above her head. So those would be some details that you could kind of take into consideration that you might not necessarily notice with the copy of the painting that you have. So, Thursday night, if you want to take a look at this again, Google Classroom has the copy of the painting in color that you could take a look at. Any questions about anything? Okay. Abigail, which one did you start with? Did you go chronological, start at, or
Yeah.
did you skip number 1?
No.
No?
I know.
You didn't work together with her? She's usually partner in crime. Yeah. So you just didn't put forth maximum effort. Well, we don't have to start with number 1. What one do you want to start with?
I have the most for number one.
All right, let's start with number 1. And so what I'm looking for with this is what are aspects, whether it be number 1, 2, 3, 4, that we see coming up over again. So it could be thematic things, could be direct parallels, could be some indirect parallels. But the whole idea is it gives you a way to kind of look at multiple scenes within the course of the book just by starting at one place. So what are some things?
Well, starting off with the prologue, I said he kept saying like I'm an invisible man, and then he kept saying, "What did I do to be so black and blue?"
So what's the repetition?
It was just like constantly saying.
Okay, so repetition within that scene.
It's like literal
Okay,
repetition.
okay. And you throwing out the invisibility. And this can be for you, and this could also be for other people. What were some things from within the prologue that we see coming up at other places within the book as well? So not only just repetition within that scene, which we certainly have, but like ideas that keep kind of coming up a little bit. Olivia. Okay. So not saying that, and obviously nothing wrong with it here, but not paralleling survivor modes for him at other times, but other characters who would be like him in the prologue. Bledsoe, Brockway, doing what you need to in order to get by. Yeah, that'd be good. Aiden, do you have something else? Rose?
We talked a lot about like some of the like the light bulbs and he made this light.
Mm-hmm.
And that throughout the whole book.
So we got the light bulbs. What other scenes come to mind when you think of, like, whether it be literal light coming from ceiling or just lightness?
He says he's blinded by light.
Okay. In the arena speech that he gives, the first one with the Brotherhood, and a lot of you, thank you, made reference in the TWA that when he was talking, the light was coming down. He actually couldn't see things too well, and invisibility comes up with that part. And him accumulating light bulbs, we threw out in the abstract idea, it's him accumulating what concept? Power. And that power, I mean, again, about a third of you wrote a TWA about people's desire for power, and you kind of see that come to fruition. The mugging scene, where he beats the guy up, the guy doesn't recognize him, and he uses that invisibility to his advantage. Who does he kind of learn that from? Accidentally, but yeah, that whole Reinhardt scene when he puts the hat and glasses and he's able to kind of learn how to manipulate people. You could even say that aspect shows up again. Half the time I put an extra H in Reinhardt. So that use of that invisibility, the manipulation with Reinhardt could come up. Look at all that stuff now you have for number one. That was good. What's another one you want to take a look at? I think we did enough for prologue. Boy, we're really jumping around with this one. Where'd you go with the graduation speech? Yeah, a lot of Booker T. Washington. So you have Booker T. Washington with the speech. You're talking about like when Jack says about him being the next Booker T. Washington. And then certainly in the next chapter, you have the whole statue idea with Booker T. Washington, and we might even get some more things with the bird droppings in the statue. So that illusion certainly starts to begin. And it really lets you know that it's not an accidental comparison that he does with the cast down your bucket, since he does keep going back to it over and over and over again. So that'd be one thing.
Somebody calls him
And then, of course, you have the Sambo doll later. It's like 1898, 1899. There is a children's book published, Little Sambo, and it's derogatory still, but it's in reference to Indian. Country India, like Siddhartha, not Native American. Had a kid a few years ago. They were doing a summer internship at Children's Hospital, and guess what book they found? Yep. I don't think anyone had looked at it in a long time, but it was probably one of those mass donations that you get, and so mid-August I got a photograph. Hey, look what I found. Invisible Man. And it probably doesn't make sense when we read it the first time, but certainly then when Clifton comes around and whatnot, now that makes a little bit more sense. What about, I already kind of made reference to it, what about that Brotherhood speech? What would be some parallels between graduation speech and that Brotherhood speech? You're both in a box, I mean, not, you have this kind of makeshift arena with the first one, Second one, it is the arena speech, and as he's going up to give the speech, there's a whole bunch of posters, photographs of famous boxers who have been there. And you recall what happened to one of the boxers? Lost his eyesight, the ability to see there. In the boxing match and the graduation speech, you have the blindfold. In the arena speech, you have this white, bright light that is coming down. So compared to the arena speech, you're getting a lot of boxing references. You have a lot of the blindness. And even like when both speeches are done, what is the mishap that happens with the graduation speech? What did you say? The social equality versus social responsibility, which we can also get into number 3. After that arena speech, it's not that he messed up a certain phrase, but there's a fair amount of criticism that his speech was too emotional and not intellectual, scientific enough. So in both cases, arena and graduation, you kind of have white leaders criticizing, what he is saying. So again, it's not a direct maybe parallel that's taking place, but you could look at it at an aspect from that graduation speech and certainly parlay it into follow-up examples with the arena. Anyone want to do something besides number 3? I feel like we need to break our 1, 2, 3 habit, or we can just keep steamrolling.
Like number 6.
6. There we go. They're groaning that you mentioned number 6. Now you have to get us started because you said numbers. You're like, I have no idea what to do for number 6. Nothing? Now, where do you see blindness in the book? I mean, really? Yeah. No, I was just pointing to you.
Later on, when they're talking to Ross, like when they get in that street fight, he accuses them of being, like, I mean, I don't think he ever, like, explicitly says it, but he kind of accuses them of being blind to what's actually happening to them.
Well, and Barbie is a reverend, but what is his purpose within the book? I mean, he's there to give. Okay, he's giving a speech, and it's a speech of praise. So combine that with Emily, Lexi, you have Homer Barbie really is a blind speaker, and you could and this is a literal sense that he is a blind speaker. But who else would be a blind speaker? Roz, being a person who would certainly point this out, you could certainly argue is Tim, and that it is more of a figurative, but he is a blind speaker for the Brotherhood. So there's still that praise taking place, whereas Barbie's praising Bledsoe and the founder, Tim ends up praising, and Tim is still certainly blind in some ways to Bledsoe and the founder early on, but you have this praising taking place of the Brotherhood, or at least he thinks he's going to be fighting the good fight with the Brotherhood, but he's certainly blind to what's happening. You have that literal blindness taking place with Barbie. Where else do we see literal blindness in the course of the book? Speaking of the Brotherhood, I was going to call on Jack for that one, see if he could figure it out. Thank you. If you were going to lose one eye, left or right?
I lose my right eye. Your hair can cover it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see anything.
Would you wear an eye patch, or would you just let the hair?
But then you can get tired, Jack.
Yeah, I wear
So, like,
I'm going eye patch. Forget the glass eye. I'm going eye patch.
Here, dude, fall out. Yeah. It'd fall out. I'd be talking to someone and the eye would fall out.
it was just like start rolling.
That'd be disgusting.
If in college you read King Lear, he takes out his own eyes with a spoon.
Ew.
Good old Shakespeare. Anything else with Barbie? Carol? Okay, yeah. And certainly it seems that for Barbie, I think most of us look at the blindness as being a weakness because there's an inability to perceive things. For Reinhardt, the blindness, and again, not a literal one, but more of a figurative one, is a strength because he's able to use it to his advantage. So the blind reverend, but certainly more of a strength when it comes to perception, as opposed to Barbie's being a weakness that he can't really tell what's going on in the world. I'm just going to stand however I can. Oh, now you want to talk.
I just said that he's blind to Bledsoe's manipulation, like abuse of power.
Mm-hmm. And that would be similar to, like, Tim and, yeah. I don't know what color here. Transition. What's a good example of Bledsoe's abuse of power?
The shackle.
Ooh, didn't even have to call you for that one.
Bam.
Jack, where do we see a shackle come up later?
With Clinton.
It's the other guy.
You're saying this enough that you're going to write in your TWA, Bill Clinton selling Sambo dolls. Brother Tarp.
Remember?
And I don't know if this is where the name comes from, but Tarp, what was he before? He was trapped. And he was in the chain gang, and he was able to break free.
It was.
So, whereas Bledsoe enslaves others, Tarp was enslaved. He gives Tim the shackle. What's Tim do with the shackle? Because Tim does everything with all the stuff that he gets. He keeps it. It's in his briefcase.
Wait.
So, in some ways, he's still kind of trapped with what's going on.
So, this is like a literal interpretation. Like, why would he carry, like, isn't a shackle pretty heavy?
Well, yeah, if it's the full thing, yes. Like, what's the guy from Notre Dame? The Hunchback. What's his name? Thank you. You have Quasimodo shoulders after a while with it. It gets described as kind of like being a chain, like a broken chain. So it could just be, like a link or two. Anyone remember why Tarp says he got chained, trapped? Because he said. And this is like opposite of Grant. He said, no. He goes, I went so far. I said, hell no. And then they enslave him. Where opposite of grandfather's advice, you yes him to death. So you have this example of grandfather saying yes, and Tim always says yes. You have Tarp say no, and it almost seems like no matter what happens, you end up kind of getting trapped, enslaved somehow. Anyone remember how long he's on the chain gang? I think he goes years, months, and days with this one. It is a good amount of longer than any of you've been alive. 19 months, or 19 years, 6 months, 2 days. So 19 years he is trapped, and then gives that to Tim. Do you remember what else he gives Tim? It's on his wall. I can't read lips. I don't know what you're saying. Yeah, it's the portrait of Frederick Douglass. And certainly Frederick Douglass is, well, we talked about this. He might still be alive, 199, going strong last month. Douglass is a freed slave. Douglass is similar to Booker T. Washington, both born into slavery, black mother, white father, and I forget Douglass's birth name, but he changes his name. And one of the complaints of some people, few, with that it's too much of like a white northern name, Frederick Douglass. And again, a little bit of irony. Tim, he's in the Brotherhood. What does he now have? New name, given to him by brother Jack. Again, so I don't know if Ellison's kind of playing around with that idea a little bit or not, but Tarp certainly seems to be a person who would be fighting, quote unquote, the good fight. So he's broken free, knows from experience what is going on, literal, not slavery, but certainly being trapped, and then also kind of going back to heritage with Frederick Douglass and portrait and all those things. 3, 4, 5. I want to save 9 for a little bit. 3. When does 3 come from?
Scene 2. I'm sorry, number 2. That's scene 2.
Okay, from the speech where you have the social equality. What was he supposed to say? Social responsibility. And I think we said this earlier in the week, but all the classes are kind of bleeding together at this point. When does responsibility come up again on a criticism? Why would you say something like that? After a speech.
After his first speech with the Brotherhood, then his the critics within the Brotherhood.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a different one though.
Is it
I just want to see what name he says.
Is it when he's in the interview with the magazine and mad at him for not mentioning
No.
it at all?
I thought you were going to say something about Clinton.
At Clifton's funeral.
And it's after Clifton's funeral, he gives the speech, which they make reference to.
Brother Taft.
Whatever. Why did you give this speech? Or how dare you give this speech? Well, I have a personal responsibility. And Jack certainly calls him out on it, and it's the same scene then when eye falls out and all that kind of stuff. I would say a big difference. What happens with the social equality? He quickly.
Corrects himself.
No, I'm sorry. I meant social responsibility. Swallows his own blood, swallows his own words. You could argue swallows his own dignity. And then, it says Jack. Personal responsibility. Now, what does he do?
Stands up for himself.
Sticks to his guns. And this is kind of where that rebellion starts to happen. So earlier, much more naive and passive. Here, much more aggressive and assertive. Kind of looks like Jay Oak rather than Jack. It's like reading Jack's handwriting.
Isn't it that bad?
It's worse.
Mine's worse than that.
What does it look like? Is it just
This is actually some of my better handwriting.
Yeah, you're not pressing down as hard with your pen or pencil for that one. How about bird droppings? With the statue.
This is there's the part where he's running under the bridge and showing himself with the briefcase. Says bird droppings.
When he's in Harlem, he has droppings are coming down on him. And so mentioned all the Booker T. Washington references, and it could even be kind of like another little link that happens with him. But droppings on Tim from birds that are on the bridge when he's running around holding on to the briefcase. what did we kind of say? What are the droppings doing to the statue essentially? Whitewashing, staining. He's still holding on to the briefcase, and in some ways that briefcase is still whitewash stain on him until he's able to burn the contents and be able to kind of break free from it. With that whitewashing concept, some folks would also kind of think about optic white paint. It's a little bit of an inversion that would take place because you have these white drops on this black statue. With optic white or septic white, you have the black drops going into the white paint, but in both cases the white ends up being the predominant color that has the effect with it. So certainly still that whitewashing, brainwashing occurring, taking place. You want to do True Blood or number 9? Okay, we're here. How about True Blood?
That's a guy.
That's a guy.
Some character.
He gets paid. Yep. So you have the money, which this would also occur with Tim and Brockway. Folks will mention with True Blood that there's a stereotype. I think it's important, though, to mention what is the stereotype? What stereotype does True Blood reinforce, at least from Norton's viewpoint? Okay, so like uncivilized. So therefore, you have to have this burden to lift people up. What's True Blood's dream? Certainly, we focus on the event that happens, but what's the dream that he has?
He's in the house and he's in the bed or whatever, and like the person's in the room next to him or something.
And who? Yeah, and who's in the same room as him?
It's a white lady, right?
It's a white woman, and then there's voices in the background that kind of like can know what's going on. So there's sexual taboo taking place. What happens twice in the second half of the book with Tim?
Yeah. Cynthia.
You have, not Cynthia, we have Clinton and Cynthia. You have Sybil, which is the second one, and then before that she's unnamed, but remember that's Hubert's wife. Hubert's wife scene is weird because you expect this big conflict to take place when Hubert
He just like
shows up and then doesn't say anything. Who knows what does he even see anything? But it's kind of like the dream where there would be another person close by. So that kind of puts Tim and True Blood together. And really, in both cases, Hubert's wife and Sybil have their own agenda so far as the stereotype that they want Tim to partake in. And with Sybil, he does not do it. And then you get your Santa Claus reference, and you go, "What in the world just happened?" But that stereotype is placed on him, but he doesn't follow through with it when it comes to Sybil. But there is certainly that similar stereotype on Tim. How about the bank? Then we'll come back to Mary Rambo.
Like the bank, it was kind of like a derogatory image
Uh-huh.
of the black man, and like it kind of parallels with the Sambo doll.
I'd say so. Derogatory caricature. And both the bank and the Sambo doll, you could even kind of take a step further, and then what character or characters?
Are they both destroyed, right?
Like physically?
Yeah.
Well, the bank is in pieces. The pieces of he keeps in his briefcase because you can't burn them. The Sambo doll, though, would be one of those things that does get burned along with the Brotherhood ID
the anonymous note from Jack, all that stuff at the end. So in both cases, it's a burden that he carries with him. But Bank, Sambo Dahl, could certainly argue Tim with the Brotherhood getting paid to speak, kind of like Brockway. And then you certainly have Clifton, where both of them could kind of be controlled as puppets by the Brotherhood with that Sambo Dahl. Rambo, we just looked at Sambo. Well, why not throw in a third one? You almost said it.
Did
I thought you did. Who's the third one? It's not Bo, because it's Bro at the end, but you have Hambro.
Damn, bro.
Why? And you got woman, piece of paper doll, Brotherhood, mentor. Remember, he's the one that Tim then is going to spend time with after that first initial arena speech. And then he does see Hambro at the end, and Hambro's the one who kind of lets him in on what's really going to happen with the Brotherhood, the truth of it, so far as we're not worried about Harlem at this point anymore. But I'd say all three in some form kind of take on, like, what kind of role? Certainly teacher, mentor when it comes to the Brotherhood. I wouldn't say the Sambo doll is a teacher, but what does the Sambo doll kind of teach him, in a way? Because before the whole encounter with Clifton selling the dolls, he has a pretty still idealistic viewpoint of the Brotherhood, or hope for it, but you certainly get a sense of reality or truth for the Brotherhood. And Mary's the one who kind of brings him back after the whole paint factory. And she's, kind of like that motherly figure for him until he's ready to kind of move on. So both of them, or all three, I would say, at least have some kind of like influence upon him. And certainly leading in different directions. And I'd say he probably takes a little bit of everything from all of them. Because he does consider going back to Mary Rambo's at the end of the book. And he goes, well, I can. So she's still certainly an important person, but there's different ideas or ideologies that are getting passed from all three of these down to Tim. There's no way, obviously, you're going to incorporate all of this stuff into one response, but you can see how there are links from various scenes, characters, ideas. Look at the prompt. Refresh yourself with the prompt again. Bring in prompt sources so tomorrow we can focus on that and come up with a game plan that might work to make Friday as successful as possible.
No, because it's like too far away. No, if I help get some sort of.
Oh, Abigail has her calc test next period. Good luck. Oh.